I was told to convene here in Liège in Belgium and await further instruction, so I've never actually been here before, but context. Belgium is often considered to be one of the most boring countries in Europe. It's your job today to see if that's true or not. Okay, well, I could probably do that.
Belgium have often come out as one of the most boring places in Europe, but my producers wanted me to challenge this stereotype.
I suppose I firstly need to kind of figure out what makes something boring. Okay, I've just looked it up now, and apparently anything boring is categorised as something that is unsatisfying or uninteresting. So I suppose let's create some categories and go around and rank them.
So the categories I decided I'd use were the following: food, architecture, history and culture, atmosphere, and finally their overall ranking.
As I'm walking along here, one thing you can't help but notice is the architecture. Because right now I'm not feeling very satisfied by the architecture. It all looks a bit bland and grey. Normally river walks are quite nice, like pretty, like think of Budapest, but this one's been kind of uninspiring is the word, which is, I suppose, boring. Because that building is not very inspiring.
I found the best rated bakery in Liège, where I decided to purchase Belgian waffles.
Just been given this. Don't really know what it is, but let's try. Very loud here. Let's try one of these waffles. Really good. Like sticky. Sticky yet sweet. I've had a lot of Belgian waffles, but these are amazing. The food rating is not boring. Really good. This has to be one of the strangest tourist attractions you can get. Literally just a giant staircase. It's probably one of the tallest staircases I think I've ever seen in my life. It's pretty cool, but let's hope there's a good view at the top.
As I reached the top of the stairs, the view was underwhelming to say the least, and to make matters worse, it had just started to rain.
Given the steps are kind of such an attraction, I'm surprised that the view at the top isn't better. So for that, I feel like my ranking of kind of the architecture here has gone down in my estimations. I feel like we're sitting at like a 4 or 5, but hopefully that can improve. See, when I thought of Belgium, I thought more of this architecture, and to be honest, in Liège there's not much of it, so hopefully there's more in the main city area. So I've come down to this archaeological site here in Liège. Got an iPad showing me where I'm going and more information. I can't help notice that a lot of the archaeology is actually covered up, and I'm also the only one here, which is a bit weird. Yeah, it seems a bit quiet. It's a bit strange. Okay, I must admit, this bit is pretty cool how they've preserved everything kind of underground, all the walls and whatnot, and kind of made a pathway. And also the guy's pretty useful. A lot of history to Liège. Very interested in this cathedral, which got destroyed.
The Archaeoforum was actually so cool. It had a few interactive exhibits to really immerse you in the history, which I'd never seen before, and this definitely improved my opinion.
Wow, that was a really cool interactive experience. You kind of like have the headset on and you can kind of just move around. That's probably one of the coolest things I've ever seen in a museum. I was told from that museum to head to the cathedral, so that's where I'm heading now, and I've just got my first glimpse of it, and it is stunning. Like, this architecture is beautiful.
I entered the cathedral to see some of the most beautiful stained glass that I had ever seen. As part of my ticket from the Archaeoforum, I also got entry to the Treasures of St. Lambert, which I got to explore with an audio guide.
It's very strange being in an exhibit entirely by yourself. Well, that's been a very interesting tour and some amazing pieces of artwork. So, the history ranking, is up there, not boring. Okay, I think I'm probably at a pretty good place to kind of judge the history now of Liège. And you know what? I wasn't expecting much, but having visited two sites, the Archaeoforum and the cathedral, amazing. Like, honestly, I'd say like an 8 or 9 out of 10. Really, really great. So, big thumbs up for me. Definitely not boring. If anything, the opposite. I'd love to spend more time, but alas, I do not have that time. Right, I've just got myself a sandwich, so let's go find somewhere to go eat this. Pretty good. So now I've been in Liège for quite a bit of time, I thought I would do a few rankings. So let's do a quick summary. Let's start off with food and drink. Now, the food and drink in Belgium, I obviously didn't try much. I had the waffles, the other little pastry thing they gave me, which I'm still not too sure what it is, and then the baguette. All of which were kind of top-notch, really good food. Enjoyed those. But obviously that's not very representative of all of the food in Belgium as a whole. So for what I tried, I'm going to give it a 7. 7 out of 10. 10 being amazing, 0 being kind of boring or uninteresting. Now let's turn to the history and culture of Belgium. And I was actually really surprised here. I expected this to be not very interesting, / didn't really know what to expect from this. And I actually really enjoyed it. So I went to the Archaeoforum and the cathedral to see the kind of the treasures. And oh my god, I'm really impressed. So for that, I'm actually going to give it a 9 out of 10. Next, let's turn to the architecture of Belgium. Now, on one end of the spectrum, you've got the beautiful, beautiful cathedral and some very beautiful buildings. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got the not so interesting, slightly more dull, grey, bland buildings. Basically, they're quite boring. So for that reason, the architecture is very mixed. So you're going to have to put it straight down the middle, and I'll have to give it a 5 out of 10. Obviously, depends where you go. Liège was the only place that I went, and I've heard that other places such as Ghent might be prettier / more interesting and not as boring. Now let's turn to ranking the kind of general walking around the city vibe, which for me was a bit strange because in most European cities, now I've been to over 30, so I feel like I have a pretty good idea of what is kind of boring and what's interesting. Walking around the city centre of Liège in this case was not that interesting. Like, normally in cities you kind of like go to a viewpoint and you see this beautiful view. Yes, I went to a viewpoint, but the view was just not really forthcoming. So it wasn't that great. Again, walking around, the city streets just felt dead. I went out again in the evening and there was no one out. There was kind of no atmosphere, no vibe. So I feel like for that reason, just walking around and the kind of, I don't know, wandering aspect, I'll have to give it maybe a 4. It was quite boring, I suppose. And finally, the overall review of Belgium. Is it boring? Not quite. I feel like I understand where it gets the perception of being boring from, but I feel like it's not entirely boring. I feel like I was never bored at any point during my day. I had a very fun, packed out day, yet it just felt a bit quiet. And I feel like the architecture maybe wasn't as interesting as it could have been, which obviously brings down the overall perception of where you are. So overall, I'll give it a score of 6. Anyway, if you have enjoyed this video, why not check out this video, which YouTube thinks that you might like.